very successful first wave control of epidemic from March 2020, which came up to about July 2020, which we were able to really control, but within a lockdown and a strictly enforcement of restrictions of movement. Then we saw a somewhat lapse period till about late September. From July, we had elections in the country, and people were going back to their normal whatever behavior patterns, and there was some ignorance on the control measures and personal protection. So we finally saw in early October a second wave or a line of infection coming, which we were not able to contain up to now. So we have gone almost for 6 to 6 months with the second epidemic, I would rather say, the wave that we are still battling. So the first thing which I would like to tell is that during the first epidemic, the control measures and the second epidemic that we are still facing are totally different because of the way that we have approached. At the very beginning, nobody knew much about the disease. It was a totally new thing, and there was nothing else to do but to close down the country, stop all the educational activities, stop almost most of the economic activities, and that was how it was tackled. But it's not possible to run a country like that for long term, and there are positives and negatives, but there are more negatives when we are going to close the country for long period, which we experience very clearly. So in the second wave, there was a high number of infections came from about early October, which went to almost 1,000 plus cases by end of November and December. And particularly it was a very difficult period where we had more deaths, and we some days we found about 8 to 9 deaths happening, and it was frustrating. And we were had a difficult period of the facilities in health sector, where we were having a real need of expanding the health sector facilities, particularly beds for patients that have been admitted. And while all doing this, there has been certain changes in the whole system, where our approaches were changed. Particularly, the approaches that we were applying for Western Province, Colombo District, Gampa and Kalutara, and the rest of the country. We saw that there is less incidence of cases in rest of the country, where for economic and other reasons we need to open up those areas and to have a try to get a fairly normal life. But I would say, no, not normal, actually it should be new normal, but to an extent where we could sustain a low number of cases but still running the country productively. And when you are looking at educationally, opening the schools and running schools, particularly in those districts apart from the Western Province. But we saw last few about 5 weeks that we had a less trend with less cases detected, and it was a global trend that we saw from mid-January, basically from Europe, North America, and in other countries, where at the end of the winter, severe part of winter, the cases were going down. As also as in India, the incidents were going down up to about mid-February. And sometimes in India and other countries, it extended this lowering of cases up to about mid-March. But now we see a different trend now across the globe, where we have a higher cases reported even in India, and in European Union and many other countries, and even in Australia, certain parts, that we find high number of cases reported. And in Sri Lanka, if you look at for last about 5 to 6 weeks, we are seeing the cases from thousands went down to about 700, then to now to about 200 to 300 cases a day. And deaths for us, it was generally low for about 4 to 5 deaths a day, and some days it was about 2 days. So that is the current situation at the moment. But before the winding, I want to stress a couple of things. Now the global trend is that we are seeing higher number of cases daily and the trend is increasing. One reason is the mutants happening in the virus, therefore more virulent strains that we are looking at with high transmissibility also. If you look at certain parts in particularly in South America, Brazil, they are finding extremely difficult to cope up with the infective rates at the moment and high severe disease at the moment and deaths and other sequelae. So although in Swiss country we are seeing somewhere around 250 to 300 cases a day, that is no means a satisfactory rate, because any time it can go high. Particularly because of when we start schools last month, end of last month in Western province, while we are having still cases and the celebrations and the Aurudu is coming, and you when you go out, you would see that people are again ignorant, as we saw during August, early September days last year. And it is more than that, the ignorance. People are really trying to celebrate New Year. New Year is our New Year and it's a time to celebrate. But the issue is, are we ignorant of the fact that we are working during a pandemic where the other countries are really seeing a surge of cases and surge of deaths? So we have to be very careful, because school children, whatever said and done, children less than 20 years are in school, we don't still have an effective way of immunization then, even if we get enough vaccines. Secondly, there are teachers, majority, even in Western province and other places, definitely are not immunized. And only the first immunization dose has gone, second is yet to come. And the health professionals is likely to get it after the New Year, after the 19th of April. So we have to winding. I'm telling three things for all of you to actually think about. First one, infection rates in the rest of the world is picking up again. New variants are coming, which are more infective. Thirdly, new variants are more virulent, as we see. And still, we do not have a cure for this. And next one is that we are opening up in a time in schools where the celebration time is already we are stepping into. And people are ignoring or ignorant about the precautions. And if you go out, every one of you know how ignorant we are, not only on Colombo, even in suburbs. So all this has to be taken into account when you are looking at education, and we need to make sure that our education continues in school without any problem. To do that, the environment and the enforcement of general precautionary measures has to take place as soon as possible. And I personally feel that we can see high number of cases by beginning of May or middle of May. The way people are behaving, way the movements are happening, the way people ignore preventive measures, and the amount of basically movement and contacts we are having at the moment. I will stop here for as the beginning of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant. So, in summary, what you are highlighting is that we cannot afford to be complacent, and that is one very reason that we want to have this webinar and discuss the way forward and what are the possible challenges. Yeah, and before we move into the next presentation, now with the participants, you may be having some queries and clarifications which you can send through the chat, and sometimes our presenters might provide inputs in the Sinhala as well, national languages as well, from time to time for the benefit of everyone. So with that input, we'll export the next presentation. Now, during this time period, during last 1 year, there was school closure. I just got a different experience for the school children. Most of the time, schools are closed, and they had to get used to the online learning, another different experience, and then the in screen time. So all these things might have led to a lot of psychological issues for children. Now I would like to invite Dr. Miru Chandradas, who is a consultant adolescent psychiatrists have done a lot of work on the mental health of school children to discuss possible psychosocial and psychological issues related that might have affected the school children. Over to you, Dr. Nehru.
Thank you, Professor Indika Karunatilaka and OPA for taking up this valuable topic. First of all, from our child and adolescent psychiatry clinics all around the country, and from the data we have from the Sri Lanka College of Child and Adolescent Psychiatrists, there's a clear increase in children in the school age presenting with increased symptoms of anxiety. During the COVID period, this increase in anxiety is due to many reasons. One reason is their inability to meet up with their friends and continue with the play and enjoy usual things that children enjoy, as well as anxiety due to a lack of access to online teaching and inabilities in understanding and difficulties in comprehending some of the essential learning skills that are required for school education, as well as economic difficulties in parents have led to this increase in anxiety. As in many South Asian communities, when our children are anxious, they usually present with physical symptoms. 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds come up and say they have a headache or they have abdominal pain. When they are consulted by a doctor, it is said that, okay, nothing is wrong with you. There's no abnormal physical findings. But actually these physical findings are related to anxiety, because anxiety in children lead to increased tension in the muscles, especially in the abdomen and the frontal scalp, which lead to headache and abdominal pain. Then there was an increase in problems in vulnerable children. So who are vulnerable children? Who are attending schools, mainly mainstream schools, children who have mild to moderate inattention and hyperactivity. So they have difficulties in keeping concentration, keeping the focus during the school hours, but due to the presence of the teacher and help of the peers, they are able to maintain their focus. But during the COVID, when they have to face the online learning only by themselves or with the support of maybe a grandparent or a parent, they are unable to maintain the concentration and the parents are frustrated, and that have led to increase in presentation of learning difficulties during this period. And after the schools have recommenced, many children who are facing very standard exams, especially the ordinary and advanced level examinations, present with a lot of anxiety and confusion that they have missed so much of academic activities and they are finding it so hard to adjust to the new circumstances. Also, because our education system is extremely exam driven, so our education system is not competency driven, it's exam driven. Because of that, many students are in a limbo. They are quite anxious of how their academic activities will be covered, whether they will be able to complete their curriculum. Anyway, there's a marked disparity even before the COVID, how the education system affects the higher economic classes and the lower economic classes. But due to the COVID, because of the internet access and the availability of electronic equipment, have markedly increased the gap between the two economic classes when it comes to online classes, because some of the parents have been able to afford individual online classes, but then on the other hand, some parents have not been. In the intermediate phase, in the aftermath of the initial first wave, we saw many kids coming to the clinics with internalizing symptoms. When we say internalizing symptoms, that is mainly children who have anxious and avoidant temperaments, who are quite anxious in school setting, coming up and saying that they don't want to go back to school, presenting with school refusal because they have been away from the school for a long time and do not want to return to school because they have lost the rhythm of life. They have lost the rhythm in returning to school. So we will see in the future the impact of missing social emotional learning during the COVID period. Yes, during the COVID period, some schools were able to maintain lessons, but the social emotional learning kids obtain from school by playing with their peers, seeing the face of the teacher, singing songs, drawing pictures, that social emotional part of education we have missed. So the delay in opening of closures, especially in the Western province, will highly impact the lower socioeconomic classes, especially in the Western province, in a negative manner, and we will see the consequences in the personality development, character development, and adult psychological problem in the decades to come. So thank you very much for inviting me to contribute. That was the thing I mainly wanted to highlight today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Miuru, for highlighting all those challenges and what are the possible implications and how does it affects different socio-economic categories in an unequal way, because these inequalities are one of the serious concerns, and research has shown that the COVID doesn't affect everyone in the same way, and those who are underprivileged are the ones that are affected most, and same applies in education also. That's one area that we wanted to discuss during this webinar and identify what are the way forward, how we can minimize all these negative implications. And so it's challenging. So now Dr. Veerasinghe mentioned that we need to be cautious. At the same time, Dr. Miuru was mentioning what are the challenges and what are the negative implications of keeping the schools closed. So how we can combine two together. Maybe now we can listen to the experiences from the schools also. We have several representatives from different schools in Sri Lanka. Let's listen to the deputy principal from one of the leading girls schools in Sri Lanka. අපි දැන් බලමු ලංකාවේ දැන් පාසල් කොහොමද මේ තත්ත්වයට මුහුණ දීලා තියෙන්නේ, මොන වගේ දේවල් ඒගොල්ලෝ ඒ අය ක්‍රියාත්මක කරලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා. මම දැන් ආරාධනා කරන්න කැමතියි විශාඛා විද්‍යාලයේ නියෝජ්‍ය විභාගතුමිය වඩ කල්නි සූර්යරච්චි මහත්මියට එම විද්‍යාලයේ විශාඛා විද්‍යාලයේ කොහොමද මේ තත්ත්වයට මුහුණ දෙන්නේ කියන එක සම්බන්ධයෙන් එතුමියගේ අදහස් ප්‍රකාශ කරන්නේ. ඔයගොල්ලෝ මිස් කල්නි සූර්යරච්චි
අපිට අර ડોක්ටර් කිව්වා වගේ සෝෂල් පාර්ට් එක නම් මිස් වුණා. ඒ වුණාට අපි දිගටම Zoom team app එකෙන් කරගෙන ගියා. ඒ වුණාට ටෙස්ට් වගේ තියපුවාම ළමයින්ම මාක් කරලා ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ ෆීඩ්බැක්ස් ගත්තේ අපි. අපි තව ඉවෙන්ට්ස් කීපෙකුත් කරගෙන ගියා. ඒ වුණාට ඉස්කෝලේ එන්න ගත්තම තමයි ළමයි ආස උනේ ගොඩක්ම මේ ක්ලාස් එකෙන් භාගයක් අපි ගෙන්න ගත්තා. ඉතුරු භාගය තමයි ගෙදර ඉඳගෙන ඒ වෙලාවෙදිම ටීම් ඇප් එකෙන් කරපු ලෙසන්ස් එක ලෙසන්ස් එක ඒගොල්ලන් ජොයින් වුණා. ඒ අයම ඊළඟ දවසට ගෙනෙන්න නැතුව ඒ විදිහට අපි ළමයිව පුළුවන් තරම් ඉස්කෝලේට ගෙනෙන්න බැලුවා පොඩි ගෲප්ස් වලින්.
Thank you, Ms. Surya Purman. So basically the experience at Visakha Vidyalaya seemed to be that try to bring the children to the school, but in smaller groups. So you can try and avoid the overcrowding. Isn't it, Ms. Surya Purman?
Yes.
Yes. And also to use maximum use of technology like the Zoom and technology, so that those who are at home also can follow the same lesson while they are at home, and next day when they come back to the school, other group will stay at home and follow the lessons to the technology. So that's a good example. Maybe now I will invite Mr. Pasan Vanyasekara. He is the chairman of the BOI, the director of BOI. So has done a lot of active work with another leading boys school, that's Royal College Colombo. Maybe you can speak about what we have tried out at Royal College Colombo, and also maybe how the BOI can help, like the new technology, telecommunication, to reduce the different inequalities between different schools. Because if you take Royal and Visakha, that was the most resourced and largest among the largest schools in Sri Lanka. But unfortunately, like Dr. Miuru mentioned, the children from underprivileged communities, from smaller schools, they are the most disadvantaged. So how can maybe BOI can help, or the entrepreneurs can help to reduce these inequalities? Asanna, would you like to contribute?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm just traveling in the car, so slightly dark. I'm not sure I can be seen, but nevertheless, thank you, Doctor, and I concur with the views expressed by the personalities who have expressed their views before me. There has been a significant social disruption, and my heart goes out to especially those who were in grade 13, who missed out basically probably their best year in their school life. The sports men and women, or the boys and girls who would have played in their final year of in the respective sports that they represented school, something they would have worked towards their entire school career, or large part of their school career, want to spend, make memories with their friends in their final year. But nevertheless, we have tried to maximize that interaction. For example, I know for a fact that we encouraged all the sports to carry out fitness activities online. So every day, or almost all 5 days of the week, I have seen quite a few sports carry out fitness activities, and for example, very specific sports like basketball, water polo, etc., carrying out simple skills-based activities like ball handling techniques, etc. So it's far from what ideal, but that is one of the things that we've tried to maintain that maintain that momentum and keep the boys enthused about what they were passionate about. In addition, we've experimented with online quizzes, various challenges such as musical singing contests, talent contests, etc. We've done quite a few of those online. And during the brief periods where school opened somewhere mid-year, one thing we also did was to plan for contingencies in the eventuality, further contingencies rather, in the eventuality that the social distancing restrictions were reinforced. And I think that was in very good hindsight, because that helped. Most of these co-curricular, extracurricular activities were made possible because of that sort of contingency planning that we did during the mid-year reopening of schools. Our school is quite at a reasonable advantage due to the fact that quite a few of the students come from, at least 40 to 50% of the school students come from a background where they can afford technology at a household level. So the participation rates were significantly higher thanks to that. But I'm not sure how such a scenario was possible with some of the rural schools where the level of access to technology and level of disposable incomes were lower. But in a way, where the choice was given to the respective schools to open it up, especially where the class sizes were smaller. I believe it was possible to open up those schools for both types of activities, academic as well as co-curricular, let alone extracurricular, at a much earlier date than what we witnessed in the Western Province. And mind you, given my other role, my professional role, let me state that some of the global companies that have seen the greatest value accretion have been the tech firms. For example, PayPal, Facebook, Amazon, LinkedIn have seen their stock values multiplying quite a few fold. So it has opened up a new possibility in terms of investments for the investing community. That's it from me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prasanna. So for your valuable input, and probably, hopefully, you may be able to use your current role as the Director General of UI, maybe to find out maybe different ways and attract some entrepreneurs who might be able to help in reducing those social disparities also. And thank you for highlighting those different challenges as well. Now, we have seen and heard about Sri Lanka, what has been happening, the challenges. Maybe it's time to learn about what's happening in the other countries also. I would like to invite a very important guest from Singapore, which is Ms. Avril Tay, who is the Deputy Principal of Sawchon International School of Singapore, who has many decades of experience as an educationist. And she will tell us how Singapore has adapted to the new normal situation in their school education. Ms. Avril, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the committee for inviting me. Now, as you know, in Singapore, the schools here, I've been very fortunate to have had the support from the government in terms of how they control the number of cases, okay, that have been happening over the world. So because of that, we were very lucky to have had a very short, relatively short lockdown period last year of only about 3 months, okay, after which we had a very quick school holiday given to the school students to give them a relief from all the online learning and education that was going on. So actually schools in Singapore managed to reopen in the end of June last year, and we have remained open until now. So if you're asking what were the challenges that we faced, they were tremendous, of course. While the education system in Singapore has actually been regularly doing online practice, okay, with students, there is something known as an e-learning day. This has not been very regular until this pandemic happened, and then everyone had to switch to the online education platform every day. So that was a little bit stressful initially for the teachers and parents as well as the students. So the challenges actually, how we handled it was really on the ball. We had to do everything right from scratch. Okay, firstly, everything that was done in school had to change. We had to look at the health aspects of the students, both physical and mental. So our student counselors all have to ramp up in their ability to handle the students who are facing, you know, maybe a bit of mental stress in how they are having to see their teachers forever online on the computer. Then not to mention the staff as well, because staff's mental health also needed to be considered. They are not only under the stress of having to do the online lessons from home, they have their own families at home as well with them. So sometimes finding the right time and place at home to even do their online lessons was also very challenging. Okay, then the physical infrastructure of the school. We had to change quite a lot to the classroom setups because there had to be safe distancing. tables were put further apart, at least 1 meter. We had regular wipe down routines with hand sanitizers and alcohol wipes. Okay, this is done at least twice a day. And then not only that, we had to incorporate our corporate services for cleaning to come in and clean the classrooms very regularly, at least at the end of every day. And then the physical infrastructure also involved the school canteens because we couldn't let the students crowd. So we had to make sure that there was ample space for canteens, and even seating in the canteens. Also, we had to make sure there was safe distancing. And then lastly, the physical infrastructure for the exam venues. Okay, very much like Sri Lanka, we also have a lot of emphasis on the exams, but we also get to keep things safe for the students. So when the students came back to school, we had to ensure that was safe distancing. But during the lockdown period, we had to switch from, of course, paper-based exams to having online assessments. Okay, so e-assessments was something that was very new and not the easiest thing to do, because teachers not only have to conduct the quizzes for the students online, and put up certain things like we would use Google Classroom, or we would have Zoom platforms where we could question the students online. Okay, but assessment, of course, can only be limited somewhat, okay, because we couldn't like do a sit-down paper exam base, right? So most of the assessments were basically via quizzes, okay, that were done online. Right, then the other challenge we had was, of course, the IT structure. Many schools, of course, we have students from fairly well-to-do families. So in terms of the devices that they had to do their online education, the more well-to-do families could provide their own children with the devices. But for those that didn't have, for public schools especially, the government, of course, had to step in and assist. Okay? But my school being a private school, we didn't have this issue. So we left it to the parents to provide the devices for the students, okay? Whether it was a handheld mobile phone or whether it was a tablet or a laptop, they could find their own. So that was slightly less of an issue. Okay, then the challenge was again with the teachers. Not many were familiar with online platforms. Okay, we had to move to the kind of curriculum which we refer to as home-based learning. So in this home-based learning, we had to use a lot of e-learning platforms, for example, Google Classroom, yes, and we had Google Meet and Zoom lessons as well. So teachers also had to familiarize themselves with using such software, okay? Because some had certain preferences, like Zoom over Google Meet and so on. Lab experiments was a huge challenge. Of course, there was no more physical lab experiments that the students could do. So teachers had to switch to finding online replacements, such as simulated lab experiments that are from online resources, or find databases which the students could use in order to still do their analysis. My school is an IB World School, so we offer the diploma program where there is quite a lot of emphasis on coursework. So the teachers actually had to become a little bit more creative. Yeah. So what were the opportunities? One of the opportunities that we have developed in this new normal situation is actually we are moving towards blended learning, okay? Meaning that we are going to blend IT into the classrooms in a sort of hybrid way. While we still have face-to-face lessons, we are going to increase the use of more IT. So in other words, within the lesson itself, we could have students who are present in class as well as students who are at home. Perhaps they're on stay-home notice or quarantine order or sick on MC and unable to attend school. So we would incorporate the IT learning while the teacher is teaching, and no student will be left out. Okay, so that's one of the moves that we are going towards. Of course, the second thing that we need to move across is to find an appropriate learning management system or an LMS. So our schools are looking for different LMSs that best suit the school environment, okay? So I think maybe in Singapore, our situation may be a bit different than Sri Lanka, but definitely one of the things that we will really have to ramp up is both teacher or the teaching staff capability and competency, as well as the student engagement, okay? Because as what your psychologist had said, psychiatrist had said, mental health is a very, very real issue that we have to work with, okay? So in any school, we got to make sure that we bring together the school counselors and the student development teams to support the students during the learning process. I hope this helps. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Avarite. And you have highlighted a very important point that we need to support the teachers also, and not only the students, but teachers also, because they are also facing a totally new situation, very unfamiliar. So how can we support, and how can we support them to get the students? So it's a very important point, in addition to what you have mentioned about adhering to the preventive measures and also use of new technology like simulation. So thank you very much for sharing this experience, and hope you can stay with us till the webinar so that others will have a lot of questions related to how things happen in Singapore.
Yeah, sure. Not an issue. Thank you.
So talking about technology now, we have from the Rupavahini Corporation, we have the head of the education unit of the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation, Mr. Chandasiri Thabavita with us. And thank you for joining us, Ms. Thabavita. Can you tell us how the electronic media can help the education sector to face this new normal situation, and also especially help those who are underprivileged? What are your inputs? What are your plans? Over to you, Mr. Thabavita. Sounds are not coming. I think it's muted. Mr. Thabavita, your voice may be muted. Can you unmute yourself? Still it is muted. Can you unmute yourself? Can others mute their mic? Can others mute their microphones, please? Mr. Thabavita, can you unmute yourself? It is your microphone is muted.
Okay.
Okay, now it's good. You can start.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry for this. Thank you very much, Professor Indika Karunaratne, for inviting Rupavahini to join this important meeting. And first of all, I would like to say the Rupavahini Education Division and started to education program for the school children, curriculum-based education, 4 decades, nearly 4 decades. As you know, Rupavahini Corporation started in 1983 as a gift of Japanese government, and especially for the education programs, producing education program to uplift the education of school children in Sri Lanka. And from the 1984, we did the education programs for school children all over the country, especially Tamil programs and Sinhala program. We telecast through the main channel, in Rupavahini main channel, Channel 1. And as you know, Rupavahini is the pioneer education channel in comparing other channels, because of I proudly say, and all of the program we giving free of charge for the children, because we are producing programs and giving it to POTV and Dialog TV, POTV for the through the telecom, and receive the programs rural area students especially free of charge, charges given to them. And especially the COVID period, all over the country lockdown, as you know, and mid-March, And as soon as the lockdown, we Rupavahini decided to immediately do the program. All the schools closed from this time, and we Rupavahini decided to do the program, not only one channel one, to separate our channel I. Channel I means EYE, Education, Youth and Entertainment. But we provide the whole channel and 24 hours for the school children from during the COVID period from the beginning, start mid-March. And with the collaboration with, I proudly say, with the Ministry of Education and National Institute of Education, collaboration with the two institutions. And special trained teachers, we started live programs from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And after that, we started, especially for the Tamil speaking people, students for the North and East, because we have 12 terrestrial transmitting stations all over the country, and main station and Piduruthala 75% coverage from this station, and other station Kokavil and Palali transmitting station. The Palali transmission station cover the whole Jaffna Peninsula, and Batiklo and other Trincomalee students can receive from the Palali and Kokavil stations. And then we started the programs through the channel I from 4 a.m. early morning, and ended till 12 midnight because of the school closed down, and especially for the rural area student, we do the program, and we combine effort. We combine channel I and Netra channel. Netra channel, we telecasting program for the Tamil students and Tamil people, and we Rupavahini channel I especially producing and telecasting the sports program. But this COVID period, we decided to both channel combine and started to do the program for the benefit of the school program. We the Rupavahini education programs, we experience producers, and we say that the help the National Institute of Education and staff and the experienced teachers join all together. We produce education programs in our studio, Rupavahini Studios and National Institute of Education Studios. Both facilities we utilize for the school children, because I know personally the rural area students, there is no online, they have no, the parents, they have no money to buy the smartphones, and also the face this, the big problem is there is no signal for the children. Some, I know that some students will climb the mountain to get the signals for their smartphone to get the online classes. Like Rupavahini is very important Rupavahini programs for the students this COVID period to cover these lessons also, because and very popular programs we producing and telecasting for the year 5 students. We are doing the nanometer programs, and very popular among the students, teachers, and parents, especially for the during the COVID periods. And now our 3 channels, our channel 1 from early morning 5 to 6, 1 hour, we telecast 5 weekly 5 programs for the benefit of O-level students, and the channel I and Netra combine 2 channels produce programs and telecast from 4 a.m. to 12 noon, midnight, for the benefit of the Sri Lankan students, especially Sinhala and Tamil speak students. Thank you very much, and I will join another time if you give us to explain.
Thank you, Mr. Chandrasuri. Already there is one question, and thank you for highlighting what Ropa Incorporation has been doing and your potential to serve those who lack facilities in different areas. Just one question, what's the percentage of houses that has a TV, a working TV in Sri Lanka? This question was coming from the audience. I think relevant to the equity and the disparities. What do you think? In your opinion, what's the percentage in Sri Lanka?
Yes, you mean Rupani covers the percentage of
the
viewing patterns?
Yeah. Say, no, not the viewing pattern. Say, if you take the number of houses in Sri Lanka, how many will have television?
In Sri Lanka?
Yes. Yeah. How many will have, how many houses? Say, percentage, how many houses will have a working TV?
Can you say again, Professor?
Yeah. Say, if you take, say, the number of houses in Sri Lanka, how many of those will have a working television?
The television, the producers for the, you mean the...
No.
May I ask the question in Sinhala? This is Arjuna Manamperi.
Yeah. Yes.
Chandrasri Mahatmaya, mage nama Arjuna Manamperi, National Issues Committee ke chairman OP ke. Butumat ma hondata ahenada? ඔව්. මේකයි පහන ප්‍රශ්නේ. දැන් හවුස්හෝල්ඩ් කියලා කියන්නේ සාමාන්‍ය අපේ පවුලකට ඉන්න සාමාන්‍ය අම්මයි තාත්තයි දරුවෝ දෙන්නෙක් විතර ඉන්න. අදට 4 දෙනෙක් 5 දෙනෙක් ඉන්න පවුලක් තමයි පවුලක් කියලා කියන්නේ ලංකාවේ. ඒ වගේ පවුල් වල ගෙවල් වල ඉන්නේ. ඒ ගෙවල් අපේ 1000ක් තිබුණොත් ඒ 10න් කීයකට 100ක් තිබුණොත් 100න් කීයකට ටීවී වැඩ කරන ටීවී එකක් තියෙනවද?
ඇත්තටම ටෙරස්ට්‍රියල් ටීවී ලංකාවේ රූරල් ඒරියාස් වල මම හොඳටම දන්නවා. අපි දැන් අපේ රූපවාහිනී රිසර්ච් ඩිවිෂන් එකක් තියෙනවා. දැන් අපි සියලුම ගෙදරවල ටීවී එකක් තියෙනවා. නමුත් දැන් ඒ ටීවී එකේ ටෙරස්ට්‍රියල් ටීවී එකේ බලන්නේ ගොඩාක් දරුවෝ এডুকেෂන් channel එක බලනවා. මොකද අපේ channel I සහ channel 1 එක එකතු කරාම හැම මේ 90% මේ viewing මේ රිසීව් කරන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට සියලුම ගෙදර හැම ගෙදරකම වගේ ඕනම දුප්පත් පවුලක ටීවී එකක් තියෙනවා. නමුත් සමහරක් ගෙදරවල නෑ මේ ඩයලොග් ටීවී නැතුණා රිසීව් කරන්න ටිකක් අමාරුයි. ඇත්තටම 90ක් විතර මම හිතන ලංකාවේ ජනගහනයෙන් ටීවී තියෙනවා හැම ගෙදරකම.
බොහොම ස්තුතියි.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandrasiri. So, yes, there are a few other questions coming in the chat also. The resource persons themselves can answer in the chat as well, like the number of televisions and other programs, and whether you have done surveys to find out how many are benefited. Actually, you can respond to those questions in the chat also. Meanwhile, now we have discussed the current situation of the pandemic and the challenges that we have faced, and what are the schools have been doing, the psychosocial issues, and what the electronic media can do. So ultimately, all these things, the decisions has to be taken by the Ministry of Education. So maybe it would be useful to ask from them, what are their plans? අපි දැන් අධ්‍යාපන අමාත්‍යාංශයේ ගතතොර අධ්‍යාපන අමාත්‍යාංශයෙන් මේ ප්‍රශ්නවලට සහ මේ ඇති වෙලා තියෙන දේවල් කොහොමද මේ දේවල් විසඳන්නේ වගේ කියන සැලසුම් මොනවද? දැන් අද අපි කතා කරපු දේවල් ගත්තොත් ඒක කොහොමද සලකා බලන්නේ? මම දැන් අපිත් එක්ක ඉන්න අධ්‍යාපන අමාත්‍යාංශයේ සහකාර ලේකම්තුමියක් බද්දා විතානගේ මහත්මිය මිස් විතානගේ මේ ගැන අපිට මොකද කියන්න පුළුවන්?
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor. Actually, Doctor, after the COVID pandemic, we had a kind of situation analysis with our provincial and zonal level officers and school principals. From this exercise, we learned about most of students, they have some kind of difficulties of access for the online programs, even also telecast TV programs also. Our system, the national, provincial and zonal level, they used different modes like telecasting programs and conducting online classes, and also making the groups, WhatsApp groups like that, Viber and those things. But lack of smartphones and lack of access of the internet facilities and especially connectivity, those are the main problems in the all over the country. Not only rural areas. Actually, even urban areas also, we identified those issues. Some schools use hand delivery study packages for students actually in some zonal and school levels. Mainly we find, we already identified those difficulties, that means inability of access and access to implementation modes for the education during the pandemic, especially underprivileged areas, and not only underprivileged areas, those who are in the low economic, socio-economic levels, including some students in some clusters of popular urban schools also, and also inequalities of facilities in schools, divisions and zones, zonal level to continuity, the conducting of lessons within the zone. They found they have a lack of resources. They face the problem of lack of resources, materials, and no connectivity, even some zones. And found the lack of parental support, because during the COVID pandemic, some parents, they lost their livelihood. Therefore, the priority has given to the maintain, find the livelihood and how whatever their needs. Therefore, they gradually they neglected the children's education. They have to struggle with their other needs, foods and other things. Therefore, we found in some areas it was totally neglected. And also the providing although schools provided the lessons through various modes, but there was no feedback to the students because the lack of the interaction among teachers and students. And also the teachers, it was difficult to find the teachers in the rural and some other areas to conducting online classes, because of most of them are in Western Province and other urban areas. They located in those areas. Then other rural and other some provinces, they had to face the lack of problem of lack of teachers to conducting the lessons. But some schools, we can see that some schools, they used, actually we make the connection between some schools in Jaffna and also in some schools in the plantation sector to the conducting using teachers, Jaffna Tamil medium classes. They conducted online classes for the plantation schools. We can see some kind of the potentials also during this pandemic situation. But however, we can see it was very seriously affected to the students' education, especially the primary education. Nearly 1.6 million students are in the primary grades in our country. They lost grade 1 and 2 children. They lost totally their first 2 years in schools. Actually, now we are planning to conduct the study also the literacy and numeracy levels of the students in primary classes, because we need to prepare the catch-up education programs for those who are vulnerable, seriously vulnerable from this pandemic situation. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Patharjan. Again, actually, you have got the same issues that have been highlighted throughout this webinar. And so I think this shows that we need to work together and find out the solutions with the work with the Ministry of Education, find out what are the solutions for this challenge. Again, there is one question for Ms. Batra, which you can respond in the chat also. How many percentage of schools outside Colombo district, and how many of them have internet connectivity? We don't know whether you have those data, but if possible, see whether you can provide the answer. I mean, this also shows that the resources are unequally distributed, and it's something that we need to find the answer, like how to pool the resources, how the larger schools can help others, so on and so forth. Okay, so now we'll move to the final round for the resource persons, and the questions are also coming in the chat where the resource person can respond directly. You may be having, based on everything that's discussed, you may be having some concluding remarks to give based on everything, all the issues that we have discussed. Krishant, you have any final remark to make?
Yes, few comments. I think it's important. First one is we need to have a very clear understanding how to sustain the school education system within this pandemic situation. We can open, we can close. That is not the answer. We need to continue this. One of the solutions that we have proposed sometime back also, there is 264,000 teachers in schools, plus if you look at total school workforce, maybe about 300,000. So take them as a priority group for vaccination. That is one. Because in schools, students cannot be vaccinated from the vaccines that we have. So to sustain schools, the major issues is to teachers. So one is to vaccinate them as a priority group, one. Second one, make sure that we continue the precautionary measures in schools to make sure that spread does not happen or minimize in schools. Thirdly, we need to make sure that we do not have super spread events in schools, because we have to continue with these precautions for at least 1.5 more years. So we should not have unnecessary event social gatherings inside schools that could be super spreaders. These are three things from that team. On the other end, I have a very serious issue. Before 1.5 years, from the public health side, we were doing programs to minimize the screen time of children, jolly well knowing the psychosocial, mental, and other health effects due to increased screen time of kids. And now we are going into a totally different direction. We encourage them to do more internet-based, online-based, and computer-based activities, smartphones, and we have increased their screen time maybe 1,000 folds now. And we need to be very clear. There are positives and negatives of teaching and using online, internet, and web-based teaching. And we have to be extremely cautious about that to make sure the health of our children are not affected. Therefore, we also have to make sure that their physical activity is increased, even when they are at schools. So there are guidelines very clearly stated certain sports activities are allowed in school, not contact sports, but other sport activities, individual sports. These has to be increased in schools to make sure that we have a healthy next generation. If not, when they go into this particular behavior of sedentary lifestyle at home or in school, we will have severe effects for the future. So these are the things that I want to tell in these two fronts. Last thing which I want to very clearly state is we have to give this clear message. Yes, there's a celebration time within next 2 to 3 weeks and things have started, but we should be responsible citizens from home to schools, and we should cultivate our message into children's and the others' heads. If not, we may be seeing very high numbers of cases by middle of May or end of May. So these has to be very clearly remembered and stated. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant. Dr. Muru, so what are your suggestions and recommendations based on everything that we have discussed?
Thank you everyone for contributing. I must say that there are some positives from the COVID that teachers who have never done an online lesson in their third-year careers have doing online teaching lessons for the first time. And there are parents who have never learned how to check the internet browsing history, learning how to check the internet browsing history. Those were some positives. And some schools from Colombo contributing to provide electronic equipment and internet access to some rural schools in an altruistic way. That has also been a good thing. For the future, I must say that the first thing is we need to shift from our exam-driven curriculums to more competency-based curriculum, which incorporates character development. That means development of special characteristics that are important for the success of life, like honesty, empathy, respect, understanding, such skills, and also giving emphasis to social emotional learning, where children spend more time together at school away from books, where they communicate with each other and learn many things, like dealing with a friend and helping a friend. Then in the primary schools, we need to move away from one teacher teaching many subjects. As you know, for grade 1 to 5 in Sri Lankan schools, apart from English, computer studies, and drama, one teacher teaches all the subjects like maths, Sinhalese, Buddhism. I think that need to change. One teacher from the grade need to develop special abilities in teaching one subject, and they can do online session at least once per week or once per month. So most of the kids will learn from a better prepared teacher. So that was the major barrier this year, that teachers are not prepared enough to do the proper online learning session. So if one teacher is given the task to teach one subject, that teacher will attain a higher competency level, so they can teach and have more prepared online sessions. So that are a few of my suggestions for the future.
Thank you, Dr. Muru. Then Mr. Thambavita, what are your suggestions? What more solutions that you can suggest? You can unmute and or anything to be added? Meanwhile, maybe Ms. Kalani Surya, the Deputy Principal of Visakha Vidyalaya, what are your suggestions? How අපි මොනවද කරන්න පුළුවන් එහෙම නැත්නම් අනිත් පාසල් කොහොමද උදව් කරන්න පුළුවන්? What do you think? Ms. Surya Perumal?
Yes. How can we help others?
Yeah, what more can you do based on what we have discussed today? And yes.
We have resource persons. They can conduct Zoom lessons, and they have technology also. We have technology also.
Yeah, so
we can give technological support and resource persons, we have special teachers.
Yeah, so I mean that may be one way forward, like how the bigger and more resource schools like the Colombo larger schools like Anand or Visakha, so then
yeah,
the other schools that could be something to consider. The education ministry also would like to consider maybe the technological support or maybe online lectures, sharing the lectures with other schools. Those could be good opportunities to reduce the inequities. For example, if you can share your online lectures with other schools, that might be one way to reduce the inequity. Yes. So yeah, and what are the suggestions now? Because every you have received a lot of things, lot of issues, challenges. Some are similar to Sri Lanka, Singapore, and some are very different. What are your recommendations or suggestions?
It's very hard for me to make a recommendation here because we understand that there are great differences in the economic classes of the parental backgrounds, and not only that, sometimes cultural issues also can come into play because Singapore is of course a multicultural country. So we have, issues also handling students who come from different backgrounds. And my school being an international school, we also have to handle students coming from different countries as well. So in this respect, I think, not that it's a suggestion, but there are things that the schools need to look at, okay? And that is, when you design certain curriculum, the curriculum that you all are designing has to suit, of course, firstly, the environment. Now, I've seen some of the comments. Yes, there's a lot of issues with internet connectivity. And then there is the lack of ability of the parents to be able to support the children. They may not even know what their child is supposed to be doing. Then, of course, there are the mental issues behind it. So, because of all this, when you all decide on which curriculum you all want to move, if it's going on to an online education platform, then you need to find a suitable mix of curriculum that can match that level of engagement that the students can be involved in. Because if the students are like, very rural countries in that rural regions, so that kind of setting may require, a different approach to how you're going to design your curriculum. So I do agree that sharing of resources between schools is one way to cut down on having to have too many different individualized curriculum designs. Okay, so that is one aspect which I fully agree. And even within our international schools here in Singapore, we have networks of schools that do a lot of sharing in between. Because we are a little bit more homogeneous, being international schools, maybe we develop almost a similar curriculum here. So I hope that that will help you all.
Yeah, definitely, because I mean the differences and disparities, that's the biggest challenge that we face, and how we can customize the approaches in those different areas to make sure that we reach the equality. Ms. Bhadra Vithanage from the Education Ministry. So what are the kind of say points that you can take from this discussion? Maybe the Education Ministry can consider.
Yes, Doctor. Actually, we think we can't predict about when we can come to the normal situation. Therefore, however, we need to think about the children's education. Our responsibility is to no one left behind. Therefore, we suggest to implement in school and out of school blended alternative modes. Depend on the necessity and the resources. That's why we are suggesting provide school-based grant to the schools, the preparation of their own ways, using their resources. And also the students, those who are do not have access to their schools, they need to direct to the closer schools to their residents. And also we need to think about other type of community-based program or whatever alternative programs, because some areas we have a problem of teachers, shortage of teachers. Even this is not like Western Province. Even Western Province, in some areas we have a problem. This problem. Therefore, we need to think about using new technology for reaching all vulnerable groups and support to schools. There's some kind of strengthening their capacities and identified new ways, new programs. This is our suggestions.
Thank you. So, I mean, obviously there are no easy solutions. That's why we need to get together and discuss the different approaches and support each other. Now we are actually coming to the close of this very important webinar. Before we conclude, can I ask Engineer Adina Manamperi, who is the head of the National Issues Committee, also to make his concluding remarks, followed by Dr. Alit Wijetunga, who is the past president and also keen interest on education, to provide their concluding remarks so that that would make it complete. Engineer Adina, what will be concluding remarks from you?
Thank you, Doctor. Should I go first? This is Arjun.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Indika. I think it appeared to me some of the key presenters have not come today, right? The secretary to the Ministry of Education, etc.
Yeah, so, yeah, they
right. That's okay. But I think even the presenters who presented stuff was very useful. Only thing is, my suggestion is that we would like to get some real statistics. I posted some statistics. In fact, Mr. Chandrasiri was correct. There's about 95% penetration of TV in each household. That is true. But the internet penetration is about 30% in Western Province, and in many other provinces, it's a lot less. So that is something that we need to study. And I would like to convey the message to Ms. Bhadra. I will convey my email address to you, Ms. Bhadra. But I like to suggest overall to all those who have done something about this situation to begin the process of gathering data, because Sri Lanka does not have statistics. There are 10,000 schools, and I think almost 9,000 of them are outside Colombo Western Province. And I go to them on a regular basis, and they don't even have slippers. Most of these children. In fact, I went to Venapur school recently, and a Kurunagara school, they don't even have slippers. So the situation is that we have to gather statistics. That is what I like to suggest, Professor. During this period, we can start gathering statistics. I think that's very important. So overall, thank you very much for doing this. Very good, and I appreciate all the input from the presenters. They were very clear and loud and clear, and they came on very well on Zoom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And maybe Dr. Lalit also.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor, giving me the opportunity to give my remarks. So first and foremost, let me thank all the presenters. They have spent their valuable time to educate us. So one thing, all in all, I feel, I don't say sorry. So then I feel the education department and the Rupohaini Corporation, they will have to do a thorough survey about the underprivileged students and the underprivileged families. So I think Ms. Badra, if you are interested, we can submit our report that we have prepared for education systems. It has very clearly indicated how we can help the students. So we have proposed that we can have centralized places in rural areas. So then Rupohaini Corporation can help to provide technical support and also the data. So SLT and the other private service providers, they are willing to help. And also we propose to identify the best teachers in the particular subjects all over the country. So they can deliver the respective subjects. They can deliver the respective subjects. So then the entire country, they can get that they all privileged to listen to the best teachers in the country. So it's a suggestion, Ms. Badra. So,
Yes.
so if you can give us the opportunity, we can give you the descriptive suggestions, so that we have already proposed to Dr. Sunil Navaratna. So thank you very much for everybody, especially the moderator and the chairman of the education committee. You have done a good job, Professor. So if you can continue the same dialogue for few months. So actually we have already completed 1 year of pandemic. So I don't think that we are late, but we can do a lot of things. The OPA is in front. Thank you, Professor. I wish you all the best, and our team, and also the president of the OPA and the team for their organizing of this nature of very important session. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Lalit. I would like to request, please share the information what you have.
Definitely, the professor will convey. You are interested for a soft copy or a hard copy?
Soft copy is okay. I can share our situation analysis also with you.
Please, we'll start the communication.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Certainly, that's the idea. I mean, we'll be sharing this video recording and also the summary of this discussion with all the stakeholders, because what we want is to start this as a platform to start this dialogue, because we don't expect all the problems to be solved in one way. That's not going to happen, but this will be a good starting point to have a good, meaningful dialogue with all the stakeholders. I can see another very important person in the among the participants, WHO, the special COVID representative, and the past president of the Sri Lanka Medical Association, Dr. Bharita Pepon, who has done a lot of work related to in the status of rural areas in the country. Dr. Pepon, would you like to speak a few words? Dr. Bharita Pepon, please. Meanwhile, Dr. Kirti, any brief remarks you want to make?
No, simply I just want to thank you, and what I feel that we should continue this exercise for some more time. That is the most effective thing. That's all.
Thank you. And then maybe I want to ask from Engineer Anirudh Sinha, the chairman of the Career Guidance Seminar, to provide his comments. You can make this.
Professor, as chairman of the Career Guidance Committee, I would like to give some suggestions for the Ms. Bhadra and Mr. Tambavitya, and to Dr. Lalit comment. I think in the pandemic situations, we can make opportunities. We can find the opportunities how to use that pandemic situation in the better way. As clearly mentioned, some of the speakers that we have inequalities, what is called resources among the country. We have 1.5 million plus students in the primary education. My suggestion is, sometimes you know that Rupani Corporation is conducting some programs for the students. But meanwhile, some schools are conducting some online classes for the students. But there are some, what is called mismatch. How can I say mismatch? If the Rupani Corporation is conducting some program, there are some programs conducted by the school. But if you can do a joint, what is called effect by the Education Ministry and the Rupani corporations, you can pass your what is called resources for the rural areas especially. Example, if you can give the proper message for the school, maybe a principal or whatever the region. Okay, this time we are conducting these programs. Then a lot of school may be not conducting their programs especially. That is the one suggestion. Other suggestion is, as Dr. Lalit mentioned, we have very good resources in the Colombo, especially some schools. If you can use the teachers to give the equal, what is called opportunities for the other areas by providing special teachers for the skillful teachers to conduct online session for the other areas. So please, my suggestion is please do a combination of the agreement between Rupani Corporation and Education Ministry to get the best output. That is my suggestion, Professor.
Thank you. And to conclude, I would like to invite the President, Engineer Shant Selva, to make his remarks. Thank you, Professor Indiga. I'm really happy that we were able to have a very informative and fruitful session today on this timely topic. Issues related to online learning and online teaching came to light during the program. Also, we heard how the online education is happening in countries such as Singapore and how they address the issues related to online education. I hope our decision makers in the education sector would be able to consider the difficulties faced by our students and particularly the teachers and take steps to iron out the issues as much as possible for the benefit of our students and teachers. Let me conclude saying a big thank you to all the erudite speakers who participated in the today's webinar and also appreciate the efforts taken by OPA Standing Committee in organizing this timely webinar. Over to Professor Indica to propose a vote of thanks. Thank you very much. And now it's my pleasant duty to thank everyone who contributed to the success of this webinar. And first of all, I would like to thank all the resource persons for sharing their very valuable expertise and experience. This was an extremely valuable session with a lot of ideas coming up. Professor Manoj Veerasimha, Dr. Chandradas, Ms. Kalani Suryaperuma, Ms. Avni Tay from Singapore, the Pathan Vandasekara, Ms. Chandrasiri Thambavitya, and from the Ministry of Education, Ms. Bhadra Vitanaki. Thank you all of you. And also the three committees, the Education Committee, all the members, and also the National Issues Committee, as well as the Career Guidance Committee, the chairpersons and the members. Thank you very much for coming together for this important event where we can use as a starting point for our future dialogues and decision making. And also a very big thank you for two doctors, Dr. Chandana Kapattu and Dr. Sajid Edilsingh, for liaising and with the contact resource persons with the Ministry of Education and Upani Corporation. And also to Dr. Kirti as well for all the coordination. And this activity was conducted totally as in-house activity, the technical resources from OPA, because we want to develop the resources and the expertise here as well. Therefore, I would like to thank the OPA office, the center director, the president, and also Secretary General Ms. Ruchira, all of you for the support, valuable support given, and especially the technical staff, including Lakshika, Dulanti, Bandhu, and everyone, because you supported very much, and Manavi for coordinating this activity. And last but not least, all the participants, because your contribution was very important, and we have to work together and get together and move forward from there onwards. So with that, we conclude this very important